At the start of this year, I had never programmed a video game before, but now I've made 52, and I didn't AI vibe code any of them. If you spread that out evenly across the year, that comes to 1 game per week, and the craziest part, my original goal was double that. This is the story of how I failed my New Year's resolution. Even though I did this challenge publicly online, I didn't tell anyone I knew IRL what I was doing. I kept it secret, even from my husband, who found out about halfway through the year. Most people resolve to grow their savings or exercise more, but not me. I love a nearly impossible challenge. What can I say? I'm full of hubris. You probably want to see all the games I made, and don't worry, we'll get into that soon. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what my mindset was when I started this challenge. There are many yardsticks by which people measure success. Money, awards, popularity, too many to list in a succinct way. I mean, you probably had a definition or two pop up in your head just now. In researching this topic, I came across a slew of inspirational quotes and definitions of success, and I will spare you the snobby YouTube video essayist urge to rattle them all off just to sound smart. Instead, I just want to tell you what my definition was at the beginning of this year. I have to finish this to prove I'm not a quitter. Though an incessant urge to prove myself was not the only factor that led me to commit to this sort of marathon. I realized there might actually be some benefits to such a goal. The time restriction would force me to make tiny games. Frequently moving on to another project would keep things interesting, and being able to call something done really helps with motivation. Previously, when trying to learn, I would get discouraged because I had no idea what I was doing, and I would dread opening the same old, buggy, unfinished project. But beyond that, I needed to be kept accountable, like having a gym buddy. So I decided to live stream the process, thereby adding social pressure. And on top of that, there were people in the chat to help me out when I got stuck, so it was a win-win, really. So why didn't I use AI and vibe code my way through it? Maybe I would have made more than 52 out of 100 that way. Well, the short answer is, I wanted to be able to proudly and honestly say that I actually did something. The plagiarism machine was not something I wanted to depend on or use as a crutch. For the sake of transparency though, I will admit that before I figured out how to disable the Google AI overview by just using DuckDuckGo instead of Google, there were a couple of snippets of the Godot documentation I got from there, because naturally it scraped it, and probably a grand total of like 8 lines of example code that I had gotten from it. But that was the extent of my AI code usage across the whole year. I never went out of my way to use it. As an artist, I am against generative AI on principle. I know how much effort and practice it takes to actually build a skill. Much like training a muscle requires lifting weights with your body, not using a forklift. In order to actually grow as a human being, you must experience discomfort. So what were the results? The fruits of my labor? Let's start at the beginning. I began using the 20 games challenge as a template: Pong, Flappy Bird, Breakout, and Frogger. Pong was the game that taught me how to say good enough. Not just about features in the game, but also about myself, that I was good enough to make games. I just had to spend time on it. Flappy Bird was exciting to me because I made it so quickly. It's devastatingly simple, and I did it in just one 4-hour stream. This boosted my confidence about achieving the 100 games goal. Breakout was the first game I made that actually felt like fun to play. I casually showed my husband, and he played it for 45 minutes straight with no breaks. And it's only one level. He played it on repeat. He was very quick to report bugs directly to my face though. Frogger taught me exactly how easy it is to overscope a game by planning way too many features, getting caught up in the art, and making systems that were above my skill level, as well as how easy it is to become blind to the difficulty of a game you made. Playtesters all agreed it was way too hard to be fun. Next, I started on River Raid. I struggled with this one. It's buggy and inconsistent and kind of a mess. I had to drop it early in order to get started on a team-based game jam submission. I was the artist and animator for a game called I Just Work Here, and I created this many sprites over the 2-week jam period. And I also got some practice using version control systems while working with my teammates. Speaking of my teammates, they were incredible. Like, Jeremy, the sound designer, made awesome music. Matt, the game architect, was like fundamental to making the systems work to be a game at all. Lance was amazing at creating the NPC like logic and pathing, getting them to like act like little dudes. And Charles had his hand in every pie. He was just like going around and like setting up the game environment and adding those extra little features that really pushed it over the top. It was truly an awesome experience to be able to work with such amazingly talented and skilled people. But this consumed my entire 2-week buffer, and I had to lock in if I wanted to keep up my game output rate. So I jumped right into Asteroids, Date Everything, Cookie Clicker, and Snake. Asteroids, or Slimes, as I called it, was my most complex character controller up to that point. The rotational flight and elemental attacks were pretty complex for me to implement, but I got it working and moved on. Spicy Dating Sim. This wasn't literally based on Date Everything because I don't think it had come out yet when I made this, like I had never heard of it, but more on those quirky dating sims in general. The intent was to have the spices date each other, and how you sorted the spice rack would determine how you paired everyone up. But I spent way too long on the art again, and as it turns out, dialogue managers are way more complicated than I thought, specifically for branching dialogue. Maybe I should have used RenPy for this one instead of Godot? I don't know. So I cut down the content in order to get it done, and it only took me like 4 times as long as my budget per game? The Grim Clicker. This was a 1-day project where I experimented with menu UI control nodes. My favorite part is the sound he makes whenever he harvests a human soul. It's literally just Snake. This is one of 2 games that I followed a tutorial for from start to finish, which is essentially the tracing of game dev. But I was very open about this, and I only did it to learn, so it's okay. I usually only use tutorials for like individual features I'm struggling to understand, or to like explain a broader programming concept, or to kind of see how someone else did the same thing I'm already trying to do. This again was a single stream game. I'm catching up. With my first 10 games down, I was only like 6 games behind schedule. If I just keep up this output, then I'll catch up in no time. Something I didn't internalize at the time was that if I wanted to catch up, then I had to make the 2 games per week that I was already supposed to do, and make more games on top of that, which would mean increasing my output by 50% for the next 6 weeks just to catch up. The way that a 1-week break meant 2 weeks of catch up really shows that this could snowball out of hand pretty quickly, but I wouldn't go down without a fight. Tic-tac-toe, a game that should have been simple and quick, but when I made it in just 1 day, I decided to add more. What a mistake! Mouse Maze in space! I did not repeat the mistakes of tic-tac-toe, because when I successfully made 5 levels of a simple precision maze tracer in 1 single day, I decided not to add more. Progress. Good job me. Pats on the back. At the start of the 3rd month, I decided to start working on 3D games. 3 months in, gain a 3rd dimension. That's what I always say. This was a bit scary to me because I assumed it would be at least 50% harder than making 2D games. And in some ways, I was right. My first 3D game was easy because I just made essentially a physics rage game and called it the Condescending Physics Maze, so the wonky controls seem intentional. It took me a single stream to make since I was now an expert at maze design because of Mouse Maze in space! The very next game I called the Button Room, and for that I needed a first-person POV character controller. And oh boy, setting up the camera for that was like pulling teeth. Specifically, the 3D transforms are what kneecapped me with an aluminum bat. Once I finished it, this was the first asset I ever decided to save for future projects. I exported just the character controller and used it in every 3D game with a controllable character from then on. On the bright side, I learned to do some pretty creative stuff with the default meshes and the shapes for 3D projects. I could stave off learning Blender just a bit longer. FPS. That does not stand for first person shooter, that stands for first P shooter. I basically put together a gun range and made the worst gun mechanics of all time. I pretty much created a what not to do list for anyone who wants to detect collisions in a shooter. I tried 3 different methods and they were all so inconsistent and buggy. Plus, the only way to lock your cursor in the browser game window is to jump off the map and respawn. I probably should have just followed a tutorial for that one, but for some reason I wanted to guess how to make an FPS work. Don't ask. I took what I learned about hit detection, which is to say I threw away everything, and tried out a sort of Souls-like style of third-person combat, but with rock, paper, scissors as the enemies. See, that's the rock, and that's paper, and where's scissors? Oh my goodness! I don't know why the scissors sprinting at me, snipping like that, is so scary, but it just is. Ugh. Foggy Farm. I wanted to do something a little more chill after that, and try out a simple inventory system. Simple from the programming side, that is. It is a terrible user experience for inventory management. You'll also notice that I continued to avoid using Blender by simply mixing 2D and 3D asset usage. No sickle modeling for me. I'm feeling pretty good at this point. Observant viewers may have picked up that I reused the yellow and green crosshair that indicates interactable objects. Made that little guy myself, yes I did, as well as the button from the button room. I was really starting to understand some advice I got early on from another game dev. Smalls the Kobold had told me to focus on creating tools for myself to make game dev go faster and easier, and I did not understand this at all, and I'm not scared to admit it. But I think that's what I started to do here, by creating flexible, reusable assets, making systems and components, or making my own nodes and plugins. Keep in mind, I still didn't understand Godot resources at this point, despite watching several videos explaining them and reading the documentation. I don't know, I suppose I'm more of a hands-on learner. Octopus on an office chair. The idea for this one was to make a sort of Octodad type goofy controls game, being an octopus who works a desk job and having to pull yourself around the office to get coffee and put toner in the printer. However, I got really stuck on the tentacle arm mechanics. This was the point where I finally reached the limit of Frankensteining together capsules and cones and spheres in Engine. At last, I would have to learn Blender. I'm just kidding, I downloaded an asset pack for the very next game. This is one of the games where I really started to cook. Literally, it's called The Good Baker. And despite the look, it's kind of a horror game. A sugar-coated setting that hides a dark and nefarious figure. The closer you look, the more you begin to wonder, where's the door in this liminal space? No windows? Why are the customers featureless and colorless? Nobody ever sits down. How does this knife get back in the cutting board without me bringing it there? While most of the answers there are just game dev corner cutting, it started to build this narrative in my head that the knife is actually like a cursed object or demonic entity of some kind that has attached itself to you and wants to be used for evil, locking you in a room and forcing you into an endless loop of pie making as some sort of cosmic punishment until you snap. Anyway, here's the legally distinct wooden tower game. I was starting to get sick this week, so really just wanted to do something easy. I used this as an opportunity to try out using the mouse to interact with objects in a 3D environment. While I was sick, I was inspired by Horse Plinko for this one. I really wanted to take that classic dodgeball like shwaping sound and just like do something evil with it. I also learned a little bit about sound limitations by doing this. Yeah, sound design is going to be a huge rabbit hole to go down later. But not right now. With that, I had made it through my 3D month without having to use Blender even once. Yippee! I went right back to making 2D games and enjoying my easiest life. I made a really shitty pinball game, and like that BioShock hacking minigame with the tubes, and like a Little Red Riding Hood survival game, which was really difficult to actually beat the wolves in, but my husband managed to find an exploit and defeat the boss pack. This was fine. Not like I wanted to make any 3D games anyway. Not like I wanted to learn Blender. So I decided to make chess in 3D, so I opened up Blender and started making my very first checker piece. A simple game piece for a beginner. It's basically just a short cylinder anyways. I got acquainted with some of the basic tools for like importing vectors and reducing polygon count. And reducing polygon count. Oh! Ow! What was that? All I said was polygon. Oh! Whew, that probably wasn't important. Anyway, I followed that up with chess pieces of increasing complexity until I made the horse, or the knight if you're a fucking nerd. I ended up only programming in the functionality for checkers though, because I had already spent entirely too much time on this game. This next game marks the halfway point in the video, so thanks for making it this far. How are you doing? Feeling okay? Rest your eyes a sec, take a breath, stretch a little, look at something 20 feet away. We've got a lot more to do. This next game is called Sleeping on the Job. This is one I was making to express a feeling, so in that sense, is it sort of art? At this time, I was missing a lot of streams due to lack of sleep. If you don't know, I was waking up at 3 a.m. and streaming from 4 to 8 in the morning every single day, and I was running out of steam. I was frustrated because I wanted to keep making games. This was so important to me. If I could just keep working on it. Some things I want to point out about the gameplay. The work meter only starts scoring points if you can keep it above 75%. Wonder what that represents. And when your rest meter drops to 0, you are forced to sleep. You can choose to sleep, and the point is to balance the meters as much as you can, gaining an artificial boost from the occasional coffee. However, if you sleep for too long, time speeds up. Minutes pass in seconds. Your work meter drains and it becomes harder and harder to wake up. These desperate messages start to pop up as you try to wake up from the darkness until you blink your eyes open and start to work again. I wasn't ready to stop yet. Doodle jump, or as I call it, trunk hop, was unexpectedly sad. How the blue elephant is trying so hard to get to the pink elephant who's always just out of reach. You know, maybe I should have programmed it so that you can get to her at some point, but she always flies further the higher you climb. Assemble a pen! It falls apart so much easier than it goes back together. Particle party. Wow, look at all these fun particle effects, like confetti, rainbows, fire, and a single tear shed silently in the dark. Agitated orbs. A very determined circle is breaking the house down and harming everyone inside, but her goals are beyond their understanding anyways. Cooperative platformer. Oh, hold on to your buddy. Just hold on. Don't let that rope break, even when you're on separate paths. Mini track cart. An endless loop. An endless loop. An endless loop. Hey, it's Tetris. Except everything is blue. I'm not burnt out yet, I swear. Let's open Blender again to make a custom bone asset for the Jigglebone Game Jam. I'll make bingo. Yeah, that word is bingo for sure. Follow the pattern as long as you can. Gamble, keep running, tunnel vision, gluttony. The odds are stacked against you. Click, 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 click. Don't burst my bubble now. Don't do it. Just cut it back to the bare essentials. And make sure you keep track of that little ball of joy. I had to take a break. I was burnt out around July. You'd be forgiven for thinking that my entire personal life just took a pause while I did this challenge. And in many ways it did. I got hyper-focused on dev, and I had to take a step back before the rest of my life completely collapsed. I was stretching myself very thin between family and trying to push back against all the government bullshit in my community, preparing to teach the upcoming semester, and making my previous video. But I never posted the video I was working on at that time. It was a really weird experimental journal more than a devlog. So I decided to make another one that was more YouTube appropriate, and I posted that instead. Though I might put the original video up on Patreon or something for those interested. I'll pin a comment or something if I do. But at this time, I was getting real artsy. And let me be clear, I do not endorse pushing yourself to the point of burnout. Do as I say, not as I do, kids. But I was thinking a lot during that time, and when I came back to game dev and streaming after about a month-long break, I came out swinging with my next game, Polygon. I thought about doing a little playthrough here, or like to summarize the game like a reviewer and explain my intentions behind it. But instead, I decided to simply read a Game Jam rating I got on it instead. McFluff says, spoilers below, read at your own risk or something. Holy shit. Every single prompt throughout the level tied into something else in a future level. Repetition is so powerful as a storytelling device. If we have a pattern, we can break it. We can see the subtle changes. This was brilliant. The "oh" on the 4th level is so impactful. The narrator really can't stomach seeing Polly like this. I got stuck on the final level. I got to the top of the elevator, stayed on it, and then it went back down, and then it never went back up again. So I had to start over. But I knew it would be worth it. I didn't know just how worth it would be. That ending was heartbreaking. Nice touch with the stereo pan jump audio, by the way. To me, this is a game about aging, or in general, just watching yourself or someone you love grow weaker and weaker. You manage to tell this story in a way only a game can. Only a game can force us to feel slow. A movie can be slow, yes, but to actually feel that the world is against you, to feel weak, you need interactability. Massive applause to you. I love this. I believe this next part is like an edit. They came back to add this later. Okay, returning to this after having done a "no, it's mine" run, it's not just about aging or deteriorating. It's about opening up to the world. A desperate plea to not isolate yourself. Polly's colors will always fade. The only difference is her boundaries. If she remains closed off, the world stays a colorless place. She dies without leaving a mark on the world, never having opened up. The text of the game states that she shared her color with the world, but maybe we can also interpret the colors as how she sees the world. She has someone who cares about her deeply, someone who helps her at every turn, someone who won't stop singing her praises. But since she chooses not to share herself with the world, she does not connect with anyone. The world remains a dead, gray place. The different endings make this explicitly clear. She left some parts behind versus the end. Polly left no impact on the world, only sticking to herself. Maybe there's a Christmas Carol lesson in here somewhere as well? I love this. Thank you so much. I'll have to play this more in the future. There might be different in-between endings depending on how much color you share. This is my 50-second rate this jam, and this is probably my favorite so far. A reset level button would be a great addition in case you get stuck in any unintentional place like I did, but other than that, this is perfect. Polygon. She really did make our world a more colorful place. This review just about made me cry. Spot on, McFluff. They even made some fan art using my little MS Paint like I made 4 games later after Pokemon Whack-A-Mole and Fruit Ninja. To see that my art touched someone's life and made them feel what I felt, and then to have them be inspired to make their own art and touch my life back, there's nothing else in the world like it. And that's why I make art. After my 50th game, I went back to the start and remade Pong and Flappy Bird to add more features, to spend some time on the craftsmanship and the polish, and to be able to compare them directly, to look back on my own progress and see how far I had really come. And when I did, I was satisfied. So thus, the 100 Games challenge was over. I'm not done with game dev. I've only just gotten started. For a while after ending the challenge, I was still streaming game dev as I worked on expanding my Whack-A-Mole game, but I think I might not return to live streaming. There's a lot of reasons why I feel this way, and it's not because I didn't enjoy it. I loved it. The community I built there has supported me since the start, and I do not want to abandon them. But Twitch as a platform, and frankly YouTube for that matter, just all social media platforms are decaying at unprecedented rates due to the proliferation of generative AI slop and the implosion of ad-supported monetization incentives. If this was an unexpected left turn for the video to take, Hi, I'm Catherine Godsey, and I've taught UX and UI design in college for 3 years now, and this year I talked a lot about enshittification to my students, and I am only getting more and more passionately unhinged about it. So, what does the next year hold for me? Well, I certainly won't stop programming. I'm thinking about trying out boot.dev since I was given a coupon to try it for a month by a longtime supporter with over 120,000 channel points on Twitch, Loki Trickster. Thank you, Loki. I've gained a ton of knowledge and hard skills throughout the year, and I do want to take on a more structured approach to learning from now on, but I think the most important thing I gained was a love for programming and the confidence to actually do it. I didn't quit the challenge. To quit is to make an emotional and impulsive decision to just give up. Instead, I gave myself permission to move on and to change what I was doing with my life. Maybe that sounds like a cop-out to you, but to me, that's just control. That's self-determination. I'll take the lessons with me. Nothing was wasted. Not my time, energy, or effort. I grew as a person. And that has always been the real point, because I'm Catherine Godsey, and you can't stop me.